Namaste, I'm Rasika. Welcome to Yoga and You. Today we're going to be looking at how to crack Chaturanga Dandasana, which is a pretty elusive posture. This is affectionately called the yogi push-up, which we do a lot of times in our vinyasa practices, in the Ashtanga vinyasa sequences as well. It's a great strengthener for the upper body and the arms. That being said, it also requires a lot of strength to do it correctly. A lot of times, even after years of practice, a lot of people get the alignment wrong and they'll end up injuring themselves. So today we will look at not just how to do the Chaturanga properly, but also look at some variations that you can do if your body is not physically ready for the full Chaturanga yet. Okay. We will start our practice in a tabletop position. So come on to your hands and knees. Now this is a very underrated posture, but I feel like it really helps to understand where your hands, arms and your shoulders are in this position, and that is the position that you will be maintaining for all these prone positions where you're on your hands, whether it is tabletop or plank or Chaturanga, all of them. So make sure now that your hands are slightly turned out, like you're opening a jar of something. So ideally, like your index finger can be pointing forward. Grip the mat firmly with your fingertips like you're clawing into the mat, and press the base knuckles down into the mat. Along with this, firm the forearms in and draw the shoulder blades wide across your back. Draw the navel in towards your spine and you'll have a really engaged tabletop position. You'll notice that it requires a lot of strength to keep yourself up like this. This is what we're going to maintain throughout our practice. Now from this tabletop, we'll start to take some wrist stretches, which is the second most important thing when we're talking about being on our hands like so. So we'll start by rocking front and back. Okay, so rock front, taking your shoulders past your wrist and back. Let's do this 5 times. 1, 2, 3. Notice how it feels on the wrist. 4 and 5. Now take your fingers back to point towards your legs and we'll move back and forth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll do some lateral stretches for the wrist now. So take your fingers to point out sideways and bring your wrists closer together. You're going to move the body side to side, just rocking your body side to side. 4 and 5. Come back to center, and our last wrist stretch, you're going to bring the top of your hands down so the palms are looking up at you, fingers pointing towards each other. Bend your elbows and make a fist out of both your hands. I call this the King Kong pose. And then try your best to straighten your elbows as much as you can. Even if it doesn't go to straight completely, that's fine. Stay here for another 4, 3, 2, and 1. Gently release and sit back in Vajrasana. Now maintaining healthy wrists is very important when you're practicing Chaturanga because your hands are in this position all the time. So you want your wrists to be healthy. Okay. We'll take this one step further by getting into plank. We're looking at plank, which is the foundation of for your Chaturanga. Okay. So from your tabletop position, extend one leg out and then the other leg out. You're coming into plank position. Very important to understand the pelvic placement in your plank. So you want to think of moving your tailbone towards your heels and your pubic bone up towards your head. Draw the navel in and the ribs in. Push down into the mat so the shoulder blades are spreading wide apart. Stay here, feel that strength and stay on for another 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Drop the knees down, take a little break. You can just roll the wrists out. Now, if plank was comfortable for you, all these are different stages Make sure that you stop at a stage where you feel like this is a lot for me, and keep practicing that and then move to the next stage. Okay, so if plank was comfortable for you, we are going to try rocking back and forth in plank. Okay, so let's get into our plank position. And now you're going to try to rock the body forward, bringing the shoulders past your wrist and back for 1, 2, let's do this 5 times. 3, you're going to come to the tips of your toes as you rock forward. 4 and 5. Drop the knees, sit back. Again, you can roll the wrists out. Notice how that felt. If that was manageable, then we'll move on to the next step, which is your modified Chaturanga push-ups. All right. So we'll do this first. You can practice this with me, and then I'll show you how to really crack the Chaturanga, or how to overcome the mistakes that most people make. All right. So from your tabletop, get into plank. Get into the leaning plank by bringing your shoulders past your wrists, and then bring the knees down. So your shoulders still remain past your wrists, and from here what you're going to do is just bend the elbow a little bit. You're not going to do anything else with your body. You're not going to lift the hips up, nothing. Just bend the elbows and back. Let's do that 2 more times. Bend the elbows and back. Let's do that 1 more time. Bend and back. Okay, you will notice that the Chaturanga that you saw now was not probably as low as what you see otherwise, but most of the time this is exactly where you need to be. It's better to have the form in place and develop that strength rather than to go too far but make the mistakes with your form. Okay. So now I will come to the mistakes that are commonly made in Chaturanga practice. Okay, so 2 mistakes that I commonly see with Chaturanga is that 1, people don't go forward enough. Okay, so you don't push your shoulders forward enough. From plank itself, if you're going to try to do Chaturanga, this is where you will land. You notice where my elbows are, they are much behind my wrist. Okay, so this could be really bad for your elbows in the long run. Another mistake that is popularly made is to take the shoulders very low. So you might be taking your shoulders ahead of the wrist, sorry, but when you come down, you bring the shoulders really low, and what that does is the hips spike up to compensate. So that is also not something that we want. So I'm going to use a resistance band today. You can use a yoga strap, which I actually prefer because it doesn't have elasticity, but since this is what I have today, I'm going to use this. You can place this resistance. So the strap, if you're looping up the strap, make sure that it is about shoulder width and maybe a little lesser than that. Okay, so you're going to take that strap just above your elbows. Okay, so just above the elbows, and we're going to practice Chaturanga with this. Okay, so place your hands down. You'll notice that your hands are about shoulder width apart, maybe slightly lesser than that. You can take your hands out, spread your fingers out slightly. From here, get into your plank. And now we'll practice the Chaturanga. We'll practice the modified version with the knees down for the sake of everybody's comfort. We'll take our shoulders past our wrist, drop the knees down, and then now you're going to bend the elbows enough to have the strap pressing into your ribs. Okay? Once you feel the strap on your ribs, immediately release, come into upward facing dog, and exhale into downward facing dog. Let's try that a couple more times. Okay, inhale, shift forward into plank, take the shoulders past your wrist, drop the knees, bend the elbows enough, feel the strap on your ribs, and then release into upward dog and exhale into downward facing dog. For the last round, let's try to do it without the knees down if you can. Inhale, shift forward to plank. Take your shoulders past your wrist. Bend the elbows. And then release into inhale, up dog. Exhale to downward facing dog. This action of moving from plank to chaturanga to up dog to down dog is called your vinyasa. You'll notice that a lot of times, so when you do this, when you practice with the strap, you'll notice you're not going very low. You might feel like you're very elevated, but trust that that is most of the time where you need to be. Trust the practice, and slowly once you're able to gain strength in your shoulders and your arms and your core, you'll be able to go lower and lower. But don't let that be your goal. Let the correct form and integrity of the posture be your goal. So another way that we can correct our chaturanga is by using the blocks, and I'll show you what we're going to do with this. Okay, so you're going to place the blocks either medium height or tallest height. If you're still in the beginning stages of your practice, use the tallest height. If you're reasonably comfortable with chaturanga, you can use the medium height. Place the blocks about shoulders width away. Place your hands right behind the blocks. And now we're going to come into chaturanga. We'll do the modified chaturanga with the knees down. When you come down into chaturanga, try to get the biceps on the block rather than the shoulder tips, and I'll explain why after we do it. Okay, so from your plank pose, shift your shoulders past your wrist and bring your bicep down, and then come into an upward dog and move into down dog. All right, now why we did that was, again, another common mistake that people do when they do chaturanga is when they come down, they internally rotate the shoulder and the back rounds like so. Okay, so when you do this, the back rounds like so. So you're really compressing the rotator cuff over here. We want to try and avoid that. We want an external rotation of the shoulder. So when you try this with the blocks and try to bring the bicep down rather than the shoulder tip, you're ensuring that you have that external rotation happening in your shoulders. Okay, let's try that again with the knees down. So from your plank pose, take your shoulders past your wrist, drop your knees and bring the bicep down. Then you can continue with your vinyasa and drop it down. Now we will counter what we just did. That was your chaturanga. Take your hands back behind you, interlock your fingers and inhale to lift the chest up. You're stretching out the front of the shoulders, which you just worked really hard on. Stay for another 3, 2 and 1. Gently release. Now, can we try one round without using any props and seeing if you're able to incorporate all these elements that we just learned. Okay? So find yourself into a tabletop position. Let's start from downward dog. Exhale into your downward facing dog. Inhale, shift the shoulders forward to plank. Take the shoulders ahead of the wrists. Drop your knees. Take your chaturanga, bend your elbows. And then let's come into an up dog. Inhale. Exhale into downward facing dog. The full chaturanga now, if you're ready for it. Inhale, shift forward to plank. Take your shoulders past your wrist. Bend your elbows. And then inhale, up dog. Exhale, downward facing dog. Good. Now, let's just step the legs forward. Coming into this forward fold position, you can take your hands behind you, interlock your fingers and drop. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Gently release your hands down. Bring your knees back down. The last few minutes trying to counter what we just did. Chaturanga does take a lot of effort around the shoulders, a lot of strength around the arms. So we'll just counter all that by doing these last few stretches. Come down to your belly. Extend your right hand out to the right side. Bend your left knee and roll over towards the right side of the body. Plant your left foot behind the right leg and feel the stretch in the front of your right shoulder. You can take your left hand back into a half bind and stay for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Gently release. We'll take it to the other side. Extend the left hand out, bend the right knee and roll over towards the left side. Take the same variation that you did on the other side. 3, 2, and 1. Slowly roll back. And finally, let's take bow pose. Bend both your knees, hold on to your feet. And inhale, lift everything up. Stretching the entire front side of the body. Stay for another 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale to release. Release your legs. And you can just hang on here and take your Shavasana like this, or you can take your regular Shavasana on your back. Another great tip to crack your Chaturanga is to film yourself. So if you're doing this video, try to film yourself and you'll be able to identify where you're going wrong and what needs to be corrected. I'll see you back in another video on Yoga and You.